Have you ever felt like life keeps throwing obstacles at you, one after another, and no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to get ahead? It's easy to feel defeated, to allow the challenges and setbacks to dictate your mindset and emotions. But what if I told you that the true power to overcome anything lies within your mind? And more importantly, the way you think is your greatest weapon, not a prison. In today's episode, we're going to dive into how you can develop a mindset that not only helps you overcome challenges, but allows you to face any situation with strength, clarity, and resilience. The most successful and peaceful people aren't those who avoid difficulties. They're the ones who have mastered their mind and learned to use it as a tool, not a trap. So if you're ready to unlock the mindset that can help you defeat anything life throws your way, let's dive into these powerful principles that can completely transform your approach to life. 1. Don't be a prisoner of your mind. Use it as a tool, not a trap. How many times have you found yourself trapped in your own thoughts, caught up in a spiral of negativity, self-doubt, or worry? We often forget that our minds are incredibly powerful, but the real challenge is not letting them control us. Most of us live in a mental prison, thinking that the thoughts that come into our minds are absolute truths. We become prisoners to our own fears, doubts, and limiting beliefs, without realizing that these thoughts don't define us. They're just passing mental states. The first step in developing a mindset that can defeat anything is learning to recognize that your mind is a tool, not a trap. Most people don't even realize how much their thoughts shape their lives. We react to situations based on the stories our minds tell us. I'm not good enough. This is too difficult, or I'll never succeed. These thoughts keep us stuck. But the truth is, not every thought is true, and most of what we worry about never actually happens. The real challenge is learning to question the thoughts that limit us. This is where the power of Stoic philosophy comes in. The Stoics believed that our thoughts don't have to control us. They taught that while we can't always control external events, we can control how we respond to them. Instead of being a passive victim of your mind, you can take an active role in shaping your thoughts. You can choose whether to believe them or not, whether to let them limit you or empower you. How can you start using your mind as a tool instead of allowing it to trap you? Begin by asking yourself one simple question. Is this thought serving me, or is it limiting me? When you recognize a negative or limiting thought, don't accept it as truth. Instead, challenge it with a more constructive question like, how can I see this situation in a way that benefits me? By doing this daily, you begin to take control over your thoughts instead of letting them control you. Imagine today, instead of automatically accepting every thought that comes into your mind, you started questioning its validity. What would happen if you chose to replace limiting thoughts with empowering ones? You would slowly break free from the prison your mind created and begin using it as the tool it was always meant to be, one that can shape your reality and help you defeat anything that stands in your way. 2. Make yourself manipulation-proof. Understanding human nature is your weapon. Have you ever felt emotionally manipulated, whether it's by media, advertising, or even close relationships? People can influence our emotions and decisions in subtle ways, and sometimes we don't even realize it until we look back and wonder how we ended up acting against our own best interests. The key to developing a mindset that can defeat anything is to make yourself manipulation-proof by understanding the nature of influence and how to protect yourself from it. We are constantly bombarded by messages that try to trigger our emotions, shape our opinions, or influence our behavior. Whether it's the persuasive tactics used by advertisers, the opinions of friends and family, or even the subtle emotional manipulation in relationships, we are all vulnerable to outside forces that can cloud our judgment. The power to manipulate lies in making us feel something, whether it's fear, desire, or insecurity, and then using those emotions to sway our decisions. The Stoics were keenly aware of how human nature could be swayed by external influences. They didn't just focus on controlling their own emotions, they sought to understand the nature of other people too. By understanding how we can be manipulated, they were able to protect themselves from falling prey to outside influences. Epictetus, for example, often discussed the importance of cultivating inner freedom through self-awareness and emotional discipline. By focusing on what we can control, our own thoughts and responses, we can break free from manipulation. So, how can you make yourself more resistant to emotional manipulation? The first step is to recognize when you're being emotionally triggered. Ask yourself, am I reacting because I genuinely believe this, or am I being triggered by external influences? The moment you can pause and reflect, you take away the power from the external force trying to manipulate you. When you realize that your emotions and decisions don't have to be dictated by others, you regain control over your actions. Understanding human nature also means recognizing the tactics people use to get a reaction from you. Whether it's guilt-tripping, flattery, or playing on your insecurities, the more aware you are of these patterns, the less likely you are to fall into them. The Stoics didn't just avoid manipulation, they actively cultivated the wisdom to see it coming and the strength to resist it. Imagine today, when faced with a persuasive argument, advertisement, or even a person trying to manipulate your emotions, you stopped for a moment to assess whether you were genuinely being swayed or whether you were reacting based on external triggers. You would begin to make more intentional decisions, grounded in your own values, rather than being swept away by the emotional currents around you. 3. Slow down before making fast decisions. In today's fast-paced world, we're constantly under pressure to make decisions quickly, whether it's at work, in our personal lives, or in high-stress situations. We often feel that acting fast is synonymous with being productive or effective. The faster we react, the more in control we feel, right? But here's the truth. When we rush decisions, especially under pressure, we often make mistakes that could have been avoided if we had simply slowed down and taken a moment to think. The Stoics understood the importance of careful thought and deliberate action. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, often reminded himself to act with purpose, not haste. He knew that when we make decisions in the heat of the moment, we allow our emotions, fears, or external pressures to cloud our judgment. In those moments, we aren't acting from a place of clarity. We're reacting to a perceived urgency. But here's the catch. Making rushed decisions often leads to regret, stress, and more work in the long run. When we take the time to pause, reflect, and analyze our options, we make decisions that are more aligned with our true values and goals. It's not about delaying action, it's about taking the time to ensure that when you do act, you do so from a place of clarity and purpose. This way, every decision becomes intentional, and you reduce the chances of making unnecessary mistakes. How can you start applying this to your life? When faced with a significant decision, don't rush. Take a moment, whether it's a few hours, a day, or even a couple of days, before you make your move. This pause gives you the space to consider the pros and cons, to detach emotionally, and to look at the situation from a clearer, more balanced perspective. You might even try the 24-hour rule. When faced with a big decision, wait at least 24 hours before taking action. During that time, your emotions will settle, and you'll likely find that your initial reaction wasn't the best course of action. When we slow down, we allow ourselves to be more intentional in our decisions. This doesn't mean procrastination. It means taking the time to think things through, to evaluate, and to choose a path that aligns with our long-term goals. Life isn't about reacting quickly, it's about responding wisely. Imagine today, instead of being impulsive or rushing through a decision, you took a moment to slow down. You stepped back, gave yourself the space to reflect, and then made a choice with clarity and purpose. The result? Better, more confident decisions that lead you to where you truly want to go. 4. Don't trust your memory. Reality isn't what you remember. How many times have you found yourself looking back at a past event and recalling it with such vividness, only to later realize that your memory was distorted? Our memories are powerful, but they're not always accurate. We tend to view our past through the lens of our emotions, which can exaggerate or downplay certain experiences. The challenge lies in understanding that the reality we remember isn't necessarily the reality that actually happened. Our brains have a remarkable ability to store and recall information, but this process isn't flawless. Memories can change over time as we revisit them, and they can be influenced by our emotional state, biases, or external opinions. When we're upset, we may remember a situation as being worse than it actually was. When we feel guilt or regret, we may focus on our mistakes, exaggerating their importance. This distortion can prevent us from moving forward, holding us back in ways we may not even realize. The Stoics were acutely aware of how our emotions can distort our perception of reality. Epictetus, for instance, frequently reminded his followers that external events themselves aren't what cause us harm. It's our judgments about them that do. In the same way, our memories can shape how we see our past, sometimes magnifying our failures or losses and overshadowing our successes or growth. By understanding this, we can start to detach from the emotional stories we tell ourselves about the past and begin to see things more clearly. This is where the practice of mindfulness comes in. When you recall a memory, instead of accepting it as an absolute truth, take a step back and ask yourself, could this memory be distorted? Is there another way to look at this situation? This doesn't mean denying what you've felt or experienced, but it means recognizing that your perception of those events is subjective. You have the power to reframe your past in a way that serves you, helping you learn from it instead of staying stuck in the negative emotions tied to it. Think about it. When you look back on a difficult situation, what do you focus on? The pain, the mistakes, the regrets? Or do you also acknowledge the growth, the lessons, and the strength you gained from it? By questioning your memories and allowing room for a broader perspective, you give yourself the freedom to move forward with a clearer understanding of your past. So, how can you apply this today? When a negative memory resurfaces, pause and examine it with fresh eyes. Ask yourself if you're viewing it accurately or if your emotions are coloring the recollection. Remind yourself that the past is gone, and what matters now is how you choose to move forward. By detaching from the emotional distortions of your memories, you gain the freedom to experience the present more fully, without being held back by an inaccurate past. Imagine today, instead of letting past memories control how you feel and act, you stepped back, analyzed those memories, and reframed them in a way that empowered you. You stopped trusting the distorted version of reality your mind created and started seeing things for what they truly were. giving you the clarity to move forward with confidence and peace. 5. Use silence as a weapon. Not everything needs a reaction. How often do you find yourself reacting immediately to something that bothers you, whether it's a comment from a colleague, an argument with a friend, or a difficult situation at work? In a world where we're conditioned to always respond, defend ourselves, or prove a point, silence often feels like a lost art. But the truth is, silence is one of the most powerful tools you can use in any situation. Not every situation requires a reaction, and sometimes choosing to remain silent is the most strategic and impactful choice you can make. Silence is not weakness, it's strength in its purest form. It takes a tremendous amount of self-control and emotional intelligence to hold back from reacting immediately, especially when you feel provoked or misunderstood. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, understood that reacting impulsively is often a sign of weakness. They taught that the wise person is one who remains calm and composed, regardless of the external circumstances. By not reacting impulsively, you give yourself the opportunity to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally. In many cases, reacting to a situation only escalates the tension and reinforces the negativity. When someone insults you, or when you're faced with a frustrating situation, the natural inclination is to defend yourself or fight back. But this often leads to unnecessary conflict, and in the end, you're left feeling drained and stressed. On the other hand, silence allows you to maintain control over your emotions, avoid unnecessary confrontation, and create space for reflection. By choosing silence, you prevent the situation from spiraling and allow yourself to process the event without being swept away by your initial emotional reaction. This doesn't mean that silence should be used as a tool for avoidance or suppression of your feelings. It's about knowing when words will only add fuel to the fire and when it's better to take a step back. Silence can help you regain perspective, reflect on the situation, and avoid saying something you'll regret later. When you do speak, you do so with purpose and clarity, rather than reacting out of impulse or ego. How can you start using silence as a weapon today? When faced with a situation that triggers you, resist the urge to react immediately. Take a pause, breathe deeply, and give yourself the time to assess the situation with a clear mind. Ask yourself, will my response add value to this situation, or will it only escalate the conflict? By taking a step back and choosing silence, you show that you are in control of your emotions, not a slave to them. Imagine today, instead of immediately reacting to a comment, a criticism, or a challenging situation, you chose silence. You gave yourself the time and space to reflect, regain composure, and respond with intention. By doing so, you'd find that not only does silence save you from unnecessary conflict, but it also strengthens your ability to approach life with calm and wisdom. 6. Stop caring about how people see you. Focus on who you actually are. How often do you find yourself obsessing over how others perceive you? Whether it's worrying about your appearance, how you come across in conversations, or how people might judge your actions, it's easy to get caught up in seeking validation from others. We live in a society where external approval is often equated with self-worth. But here's the truth. Caring too much about what others think of you is a trap that only leads to stress, self-doubt, and ultimately, a life that isn't truly yours to live. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that your true worth is not defined by others' opinions, but by your own character, values, and actions. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, constantly reminded himself that external opinions were irrelevant to his pursuit of virtue and peace. In his meditations, he reflected on how easily we can be distracted by the judgments of others, and how important it is to focus on living in alignment with our values, regardless of what others might think. The Stoics believed that the only thing truly within our control is how we choose to act, not how we are perceived by others. When we base our self-worth on how others view us, we relinquish our power. We start making decisions based on external expectations rather than what truly feels right to us. Over time, this can erode our confidence and create a sense of disconnect between who we truly are and how we present ourselves to the world. The key to breaking free from this cycle is to stop seeking approval and start seeking alignment with your authentic self. True peace comes from knowing who you are and living according to that truth, without the need for constant external validation. The key to stopping the cycle of caring about others' opinions is to focus on whether you are proud of your actions, regardless of what others think. Instead of constantly asking, "What will people think of me?" ask yourself, "Am I proud of who I am and how I'm showing up in this situation?" When you prioritize your own integrity over the need for approval, you stop giving others the power to dictate your self-worth. So, how can you start caring less about what others think and focus more on who you actually are? Begin by reflecting on your values and actions. Ask yourself, am I living in a way that aligns with my beliefs and purpose? When you're confident in your own decisions and actions, the opinions of others lose their power. The next time you feel concerned about how you're being perceived, pause and ask yourself whether that concern is rooted in your own values or in the fear of judgment. By grounding yourself in your truth, you'll find that the opinions of others become far less important. Imagine today, instead of worrying about how others see you, you focused on being true to yourself. You let go of the need for external validation and embraced the freedom that comes with living authentically. By doing so, you'd create a life that's based on your own values and purpose, not the fleeting judgments of others. 7. Make failure a habit. Don't treat it as a rare event. How often do you avoid new challenges or hesitate to take risks because you're afraid of failing? It's a common reaction. The fear of failure can be paralyzing, making us stick to what's familiar or safe rather than stepping into the unknown. But what if I told you that failure isn't something to be feared, but something to be embraced? In fact, the most successful and resilient people make failure a habit. They see it not as a setback, but as an essential part of growth and success. The Stoics had a radically different view of failure than most people today. To them, failure wasn't something to be avoided at all costs. In fact, they believed that failure was a natural and necessary part of life. They understood that every mistake, every challenge, and every failure held valuable lessons that would help them improve and grow stronger. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about accepting failure, reflecting on how setbacks were simply part of the journey, not the end of it. To the Stoics, every failure was an opportunity to build resilience, to learn something new, and to become more aligned with their purpose. In today's world, many people treat failure as a rare event that must be avoided at all costs. They fear the judgment, the embarrassment, or the idea that they are not good enough. As a result, they may shy away from taking risks, trying new things, or challenging themselves. This fear of failure often keeps us stuck in our comfort zones, preventing us from reaching our full potential. The truth, however, is that the more we fail, the less intimidating it becomes. When we treat failure as a normal part of life and even seek it out as a way to learn and grow, we free ourselves from the paralyzing fear that holds us back. So, how can you make failure a habit and learn to embrace it? Start by intentionally putting yourself in situations where failure is a possibility. Seek out challenges that push you beyond your current abilities. When you fail, instead of seeing it as something negative, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? The more you fail, the more you'll realize that failure isn't the end. It's simply a step on the path to success. Over time, failure will no longer feel like a threat, but rather a valuable teacher that helps you refine your skills, sharpen your mindset, and build the resilience necessary to achieve your goals. Imagine today, instead of avoiding failure, you embraced it as an opportunity to grow. You put yourself out there, took risks, and didn't let setbacks define you. By doing this, you would not only become more resilient, but also open yourself to greater success, knowing that each failure brings you one step closer to achieving your true potential. 8. Train yourself to lose things on purpose so you don't panic when you actually do. Have you ever experienced that sinking feeling when you lose something important, your phone, your wallet, or a valuable item, and suddenly feel like everything is falling apart? The fear of loss is one of the greatest sources of anxiety for many people. We attach so much importance to our possessions, relationships, and even our routines that the thought of losing them can paralyze us with stress. But what if I told you that intentionally training yourself to lose things could actually make you stronger, more resilient, and more at peace when loss inevitably comes? The Stoics believed in preparing for adversity before it strikes. They practiced a technique called premeditatio malorum, which means the premeditation of evils, mentally rehearsing the challenges, losses, and difficulties that could occur in life. By imagining these scenarios in advance, the Stoics could cultivate resilience and reduce the emotional impact when something did go wrong. Instead of being blindsided by the discomfort of loss, they trained their minds to accept it as a part of life, knowing that everything in this world is temporary. Think about it. When we constantly fear losing something, we put ourselves in a state of vulnerability. We worry about the things we might lose, whether it's material possessions, people, or opportunities. This anxiety keeps us on edge, preventing us from fully enjoying what we have because we're always anticipating its loss. But if we learn to approach loss with a sense of acceptance and preparation, we can avoid that panic and handle the situation with clarity and calmness when it happens. This doesn't mean you should live in a constant state of loss or neglect the things that are important to you. It means practicing non-attachment. You can still care deeply about your possessions, relationships, and goals, but by training yourself to accept that loss is a natural part of life, you can reduce the emotional pain that comes when it happens unexpectedly. So, how can you start training yourself to lose things on purpose? One simple way is to practice letting go of something temporarily, perhaps giving up your phone for a few hours, fasting from a habit you rely on, or stepping away from a relationship for a while. These small acts of detachment will help you build resilience and prepare your mind for the inevitable losses life throws your way. When you lose something important, instead of panicking, ask yourself, how can I handle this with grace? What can I learn from this loss? Imagine today, instead of fearing the possibility of losing something, you embraced it as an opportunity to build emotional strength. You intentionally detached from something for a while, knowing that this practice would help you respond with calmness and clarity when real loss occurs. This shift in mindset would not only prepare you for life's inevitable challenges, but would also allow you to enjoy what you have more deeply without the constant fear of losing it. 9. Live as an observer of your life. Don't be consumed by it. How often do you get emotionally caught up in every challenge, setback, or conflict in your life? When something goes wrong, how quickly do you find yourself swept into the whirlwind of stress, frustration, or anxiety? It's easy to become consumed by life, allowing each situation to dictate your emotional state and cloud your judgment. But what if I told you that true strength and clarity come from stepping back and viewing your life as if you were watching it unfold from the outside as an observer? The Stoics were masters at this practice. They believed that in order to maintain inner peace, you must detach from the chaos around you and observe it without getting entangled in it. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently reminded himself to view his life from a distance, like an actor on a stage. By seeing life as if you were an outsider, you gain the perspective to make clear-headed decisions, avoid emotional overreactions, and maintain your sense of control, even in the most challenging circumstances. Think about it. When you're emotionally caught up in a situation, your judgment becomes clouded. You react impulsively, driven by your feelings rather than thoughtful reflection. But when you step back and observe from a place of detachment, you allow yourself to assess the situation from all angles. You can see things more clearly, without the emotional bias that often clouds our judgment. This doesn't mean you stop caring about what happens. It means you give yourself the space to act from a place of wisdom and calmness, rather than being swept away by the storm of emotions. The Stoics believed that by living as an observer of your life, you could maintain your emotional stability, even in the face of adversity. By separating yourself from the situation, you allow your rational mind to take the lead, enabling you to respond with clarity and purpose. This mindset allows you to avoid reacting impulsively and instead make decisions that are in alignment with your values and long-term goals. So, how can you start living as an observer of your life today? Begin by practicing mindfulness. When you're faced with a challenging situation, take a deep breath and step back mentally. Imagine that you're watching the situation from a distance, as if you were an outsider. Ask yourself, how would someone who isn't emotionally involved handle this? By doing this, you can detach from the immediate emotional response and approach the situation with a clear mind. Imagine today, instead of becoming emotionally consumed by every challenge, you stepped back and observed your life with clarity. You viewed each situation as part of the bigger picture, allowing yourself to make decisions with calmness and wisdom. By practicing this mindset, you'll find that you're less affected by the chaos around you and more empowered to take control of your own reactions. 10. Stop expecting life to be fair. Accept that chaos is part of it. How often do you find yourself frustrated because things didn't go as planned? Whether it's a job opportunity slipping through your fingers, an unexpected setback, or simply life throwing you a curveball, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that things should go a certain way, or that life owes you fairness. But here's the reality. Life isn't fair, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll stop suffering unnecessarily. The Stoics knew this truth well. They didn't waste time expecting life to conform to their desires or standards. Instead, they focused on how to respond to the chaos and unpredictability that life inevitably presents. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the randomness of life's challenges and the importance of accepting what comes, good or bad. To the Stoics, life's unfairness wasn't something to fight against, but something to embrace with resilience and grace. They understood that while we can't control external events, We can control how we choose to respond to them. Think about it. How often do you feel angry or defeated because things didn't go your way? Perhaps you didn't get that promotion, or a personal goal fell through, and you feel like life isn't playing by the rules. This frustration comes from the expectation that things should be fair, that everything should go according to plan. But life doesn't work that way. Life is messy, unpredictable, and often chaotic. Expecting fairness only sets you up for disappointment and resentment. Instead, the Stoics teach us to accept life's chaos and focus on what we can control, our reactions. When we accept that life isn't always fair, we free ourselves from the burden of unrealistic expectations. We stop wasting energy on frustration and instead focus on how we can respond to the situation in a way that serves us. It's not about being passive, it's about choosing to act with clarity and purpose, regardless of the chaos around us. This mindset allows us to remain at peace, even when things don't go as expected. So, how can you start accepting that life isn't fair today? When something unfair happens, instead of asking, "Why me?" ask yourself, "How can I deal with this in the best way possible?" Focus on what you can control, your attitude, your actions, and your ability to adapt. By accepting the unpredictable nature of life, you can move forward with a sense of empowerment, knowing that your peace of mind isn't dependent on life being fair, but on how you choose to respond to it. Imagine today, instead of feeling defeated by the unfairness of life, you embraced the chaos as a natural part of existence. You accepted that life won't always go your way, but you have the strength to face whatever comes with resilience and clarity. By doing this, you'll find that you can navigate life's challenges with greater ease and less frustration. As we've explored today, developing a mindset that can defeat anything isn't about avoiding difficulties or trying to control every aspect of your life. It's about shifting your perspective and embracing the challenges that come your way with strength, clarity, and resilience. Life will always throw obstacles, chaos, and unfairness in your path, but with the right mindset, you can face each challenge head-on, without losing your peace of mind. By learning to use your mind as a tool, understanding the nature of emotional manipulation, slowing down before making decisions, and accepting life's unpredictability, you can move through life with confidence and purpose. Remember, the Stoics believed that we cannot control the events of life, but we can always control how we respond to them. The true power lies in your ability to remain grounded and resilient, no matter what comes your way. So today, I challenge you to start practicing these principles. Don't just let life happen to you. Become the architect of your own thoughts, actions, and responses. Embrace the chaos, accept the failure, and live with the strength to rise above it all. Your mindset is your greatest weapon. When you learn to master it, you can defeat anything.